Hello, and welcome to our Asomniacs podcast. We're here to talk, support, and educate on ACE and Eero topics. But first, a content warning. Occasionally, and in this episode, we will talk about trauma, sexual assault or SA, and medical procedures. My name is Jessie. My pronouns are she, her.
My name is Alex. My pronouns are he, him.
And we're going to also look at how I define being ace in sexual attraction, and we're going to look at how Alex defines it as well before we get into today's topics of how to know if you're ace. I don't experience sexual attraction. That's why I feel I'm asexual. Because I don't get it. I don't understand. I've never felt that like pull or desire or want to do anything sexy or have sexy times or any of that jazz. I
Likewise, I,
yeah,
I also lack that gravitic force towards sexual activity with a partner.
yeah, I don't have any want to do that with anyone. And one of the big things for me, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, was when I realized that I didn't have to, that that societal expectation, I didn't have to. I was just so relieved. And that is one of the reasons I know that I'm ace, and we're going to talk about that more later.
Right, and as a note, ultimately these are our opinions. Your identification is up to you, but we hope to provide clarity. If you have questions, we have various social medias that we will tack on to the end of this episode because I know none of them right now.
We're at Asomniacs, and I'll spell it out: ACESOMNYACS on all platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, uh, something I'm sure I'm forgetting. But if you look up that link, or if you go to our website, asomniacs.com, you will also find all the links there, and as well as previous podcasts and this podcast. All right, cool.
All right, so for this episode, I found an Am I Asexual questionnaire, which the link is idrlabs.com/asexuality/test.php, and we use this as a base for our test because the questions are kind of a mixed bag, and we're going to sort of ask the questions, answer the questions, and riff on them a little bit, and how close they fall to actual identifying markers, we'll see. So the first question is I cannot relate to terms like sexy or hot. My answer is this isn't a clear indicator of experiencing sexual attraction. Sexy or hot often applies to aesthetic attraction as well as sensual attraction. Aesthetic attraction is also like pretty things. Do you like looking at pretty things? Most people like looking at pretty things. And a revulsion or attraction to such things lies in the aesthetic realm and is completely subjective, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
sensual attraction is more a more tactile approach to that. Like this feels good, this doesn't feel good, easy peasy. So while many it does apply to sexual attraction, the variety of ways it's used is not good enough to determine asexuality.
Yeah, and like I am definitely ace. No questions there. But I also enjoy looking at Jason Momoa. I find him aesthetically pleasing. Some people say he's sexy. I could see that, I suppose, but at the same time, I definitely don't want to have sex with him. That is not something on the table at all. I just like he looks good. He looks good. So it's I can understand sexy. I don't know if I relate, but I know myself I am sexy. I don't want to do anything with that, but I know I'm sexy.
I've been referred to as a sexy asexy before, but that was long ago.
Our next question on this questionnaire that we're looking at is I don't like masturbating. And that's sexual activity doesn't really have a whole lot to do with whether or not you're ace on by itself cuz well yes, asexuals tend to not be interested in sex at all. Some are, and some are just completely neutral. They don't care. Some will only do it because their partner wants it. So sex repulsion is does not necessarily mean that you're ace or you're not ace. But masturbation, everybody does it. But it doesn't mean that you're not asexual just because you masturbate. Because sexual attraction is what determines whether or not you're asexual and yourself. But
Right.
masturbation is not a bad thing or a good thing. Well, I mean, it could be a good thing, but it's not.
Stress relief.
Yeah, it's stress relief because some people, asexual and allo people, do also do it for the same reasons. Like, gotta go to sleep. I'm tired. Regardless of whether or not you experience sexual attraction, masturbation releases endorphins. You might not need anything to do it. It might just be an action, or it's kind of like I've said before. It's self-service. It's like getting your oil changed. You got to do it every once in a while, but there's no excitement. Like,
That's how
have you
that's
ever?
how allosexuals stay sexist for them, but it's not like that, is it?
I don't think so. It's like, cause like for me, like when I go get my oil changed, it's super boring and I don't want to be there. It's just like I gotta do it because I don't want my car to fall apart. So it's kind of
Right.
like that to me, where it's just like a
My
maintenance
take is a little
thing.
different.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do think it is stress relief. It is a sexual activity. I do agree with Jesse. It really doesn't have a lot to do with asexuality, and asexuals can and do masturbate for a variety of reasons. Also, don't ask them.
Yeah,
Just look it
never.
up. There are topics. Just fucking look it up. Some do it for stress relief. Some do it to go to sleep. Some asexual people can have non-partnered sex paraphilias or kinks, like say
Mhm.
BDSM, or perhaps attracted to specific body parts of the person, and it can even be oriented towards a gender. It is not like partnered sex. It is not a drive of partnered sex or at a hollow attempt at it. It is purely for its. Usually, they don't even imagine people's faces in it or a specific person, as far as I know. So there is that angle too, and I believe autocore sexual is a term that is used in the ASPEC community for for asexuals to masturbate, but don't quote me on that. We do plan to do an episode on all the varying ASPEC identities as well.
Yes.
And then for the
And
next question, oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say one more thing. And for like, so yeah, that's another key in. Let's say you do get something out of masturbation, like it relaxes you, maybe it feels good, maybe you enjoy it, but you've never thought about a person or seen anyone's face or done anything like that. That could be another indicator that you're asexual because from what I understand, people who are not asexual tend to do things or see things that turn them on, per se, to help them with that activity, from what I understand. So that's
Even asexual people do, but it's just not sex.
right.
So the next question statement is: sex scenes in movies are boring to me and or make me feel estranged. For me, most ace people I've surveyed do feel this way, but a large portion of allosexual people also feel this way. So I don't think it's a great indicator of asexuality. Useful to investigate why you do or don't like it, but ultimately in the end, well, most allosexual people don't. They have more technical concerns with the sex scene more so than it's like, oh, it's sex, right? It could be ugly or stupid to them, not make sense in the context of the film. But generally, for asexual people, the indicator is just the revulsion. It's like, why is this here? It's like, it's
Yeah.
not so much what's the point, rather than like, really?
Oh yeah. There's Battlestar Galactica is a sci-fi show that has a lot of sex scenes and sexual. It doesn't even really have innuendos. It's just sex stuff, and orgies and whatnot. And I love science fiction, and I hated that show because there were so many stupid, unnecessary space orgies. Like it was just like, why is this here? It's destroying the plot. It's unnecessary. I don't care if these people are hot or whatnot. Get me more space battle. Which could be an indicator for you, as it was for me later on when I realized it, that I'm probably asexual because that was just completely unnecessary. And I find the majority of sex scenes in movies and TV shows just unnecessary and plot destroying. Like it just takes me out of the whole episode because I'm like, why is this here? Our next question. is, or statement, I guess, is I would prefer to be sexually inactive. And while that could be true, that could also be a form of celibacy if you just don't want to be inactive, or you don't want to be active with sex. But like we were talking about a little earlier, that sexual activity you could be sex favorable, and you could even enjoy sex or feel whatever about it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are not asexual, because activity is not the same as attraction. Because being asexual is about not experiencing sexual attraction. It's not about like, oh, I don't like sex or sex is gross. While those could indicate you're ace, that does not necessarily mean you're ace. And it's more that if you do enjoy sex but don't ever experience sexual attraction, you're still asexual.
Yeah, my take on this is like, activity doesn't equal attraction. I'll add to that as well. But like you need to investigate why you prefer sexual activity and why you do not prefer sexual activity, especially if you identify as gray or demisexual, since they don't experience primary attraction, but they will experience secondary sexual attraction, which generally is after an established emotional bond is there. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think that that's a very important factor, that it's gray ace and demi asexual. It's under the ace umbrella. So you're like, well, sometimes when I have a deep connection with someone, I I think I experience sexual attraction, but only when I have deep connection. You're still under the ace umbrella, because you're not in that, and I hate using the term normative, but you're not in that traditional normative kind of area. So you're still under the umbrella. You could still say, hey, and don't, some people are like, well, I'm not really ace, I'm gray ace. But no, you're still ace. Don't slight yourself because you're not fitting into something specifically, because it's a spectrum and it's an umbrella. So you still fit in that category.
On to the next one.
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
That's you.
Is it me?
Or is it, oh wait, no, it's me. I'm sorry. We'll have to edit that out.
That's
So
fine.
the next statement question is I don't feel that I fit the conventional categories of sexual orientation such as heterosexual, homosexual, or bisexual. I think this is a useful distinction. The conventional categories of these sexualities, for those who somehow do not know, heterosexual is sexual attraction to the differing gender, in the binary at least. Homosexual is attraction to the same gender, and bisexual is sexual attraction to both binary genders. I will let Jesse explain the difference between pan and bi, or the similarities and the differences.
Mhm.
But I think if none of these make sense to you, consider asexuality because you're like, well, I don't like men or women, or I don't like men, women, and or other people.
So with pansexuality, now some people say that pan is just a better understanding of bi, but they're different. Bisexuality is you're attracted to female or male, or you're both basically. And at sometimes you're more attracted to male, sometimes you're more attracted to female, but you are attracted to both. Now with pansexuality, which is what well, I guess pan, in the pan aspect, but not necessarily sexuality, is that you don't really care about gender, lack of gender, all genders. It doesn't really matter, because that's not something that is part of your attraction. Like, I like to say I'm attracted to humans. I don't care.
I hate humans. I'm not attracted to any of them. Fuck them all.
I
Wait, don't fuck them all. No,
no, no, never fuck them all. Um
that's a lot of fucking.
that is a lot of fucking. It's an unnecessary amount of fucking. Um but for me, I'm just like, yeah, are they human? People are like, well, do you like guys or girls? I'm like, are they human? Are they an, I don't know if I like aliens or not. I've never met an alien, but I know I enjoy humans.
I'm googling what the attraction to lizard people is right now.
So that's kind of the difference between pan and bi, is there's a definite preference in bi, and there's a lack of a preference in pan. might be the best way to describe it. So, and that's a whole episode that we can do as a subcategory of this at some point, and this, if people are interested. But for right now, we're
I
just looking
regret
at.
googling lizard people.
Excellent. But for yeah, for right now, bi and pan are definitely different and not necessarily the same. It was hard for me to understand that at first. I was like, what's the difference? But it is a difference. It's everything and nothing, or one or the other. That didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I think I explained it better earlier. All right. Let's go over to the next question. I go to great lengths to avoid situations where sex might be expected of me. And that's a very good way to evaluate it, but like we were saying, you might be an asexual person who is sex favorable in terms of like you enjoy it or you don't care about it or you'll do it with your partner because they like it. And it's good to look at it in like relationships. Like obviously, if you feel like you don't want to do it and you're making excuses with your partner, that's not a good situation because then there's coercion and then there's all this other kind of stuff. But it could be an indicator that you're ace, that you're just like, I really want to figure out a way out of this. And if you think about how, when I said earlier in the episode, me realizing I was ace, this big boulder off my shoulder, like, oh, I don't have to have sex with anyone. This is amazing. So that's one of the things that you can look at to see if you're like avoiding sex or walking around it or trying to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and in a less committed context, I have run into. I would definitely like try to get around people's affections and often the expectations that people would have around getting that. It's like, what's wrong with you? Why that's free sex? What are you doing, you imbecile? And I have a headache. I have a headache. No,
Right. Like
but I
that's
generally, yeah, I have gone to a few lengths to get out of doing that, and people have lots of they have lots of little rationalizations to why someone would do that that aren't as sexual. But I assure you, they're full of shit.
yeah, because they'll say stuff like, oh, maybe, and then there's libido questions, and then there's like, what meds are you on, and all this, and they just want you to be what they expect. They don't like that you're not what they're expecting. That's all it is, and you don't need to be what anybody expects.
I think that sex has nothing to do with love. Is there love without sex? Yes. But is there sex with love? Yes. I don't do it, but I believe that they are separate. The split attraction model is essentially separating the two, but they don't have to be. As far as the question itself, they are definitely related, but not for me.
There's plenty. I mean, like if you look at sex workers, I'm guessing they're not in love with their clients, so
What if they're
there's
in love with their job?
they might be in love with their job, but there's plenty of sex with sex workers, and I'm guessing not a lot of love.
Business is booming, you would say?
I mean, well, not here. Well, maybe here, but in other countries where it's legal, it is booming, I guess. Um,
But yeah, process sex work has so much historical weight. That would be useful to explore with an allo person, but for now we're just answering the question.
right. Love is its own thing. It does not have to be connected to sex. Sometimes it is for some people, but if you think about it, would if you're in a relationship with someone and you have romantic feelings for them and you love them and suddenly they weren't able to have sex, do you not love them anymore? That of course not. It might be a challenge in the relationship if you're someone that's allo and into sex, but it doesn't you don't just stop loving someone because sex isn't on the table. And
Yeah,
and
but
love
there is an angle to the intimacy created by sex, and to find out what that is, please check out any other podcast. But
but yeah, you don't love and sex are separate, at least in my opinion. And if you also think that, you're probably ace because
or
uh
arrow.
yeah, or arrow. You could be arrow. Because yeah, there's there's definitely for people, for allo people, they tend to equate them as going together. But there's plenty of situations, examples that are like, no, you don't have to have. I mean, like, Stephen Hawking had, like, what, three wives? I'm pretty sure that sex wasn't on the table. All right. I do not really know what it is like to feel sexual attraction. True statement. It's sexual attraction is when, well, from what I understand, because I don't know for sure, you see someone and you have feelings that you might want to have sex with them at some point, or you find them sexually attractive. I don't know. I don't feel it or experience it, so I don't understand it, which is a good way to figure out if you're ace. Is like you hear people talk about having a crush on someone or thinking someone's hot and thinking it would be great to sleep with them, or I don't know how allos talk, but and then you're like, I don't feel that. I've never experienced that. I don't think I felt it. And the more, and as you question yourself, it's a good way to see if you're probably ace, because that's a question, from what I understand, that allo people don't really have at all.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the key indicators of asexuality. If you say no, maybe, or a lot of buts, then consider checking out if you're on the asexual spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's like, well, you're probably somewhere in the ace umbrella.
Yeah, and it's raining. Come. So get under it.
Right?
Next question is I think others think more about sex than I do. Given the topic of this podcast, and this specific podcast, it might seem like we're rather obsessed, but I assure you we are not. So for this, I think is also a good indicator because the drive for partnered sex drives a lot of activity within the social sphere. And if if it is driving yours, then you probably allo. But if it does not, if it's not on your mind, if it's not on your mind in a way that you know you actively differentiate yourself as in the last question,
hmm
you're probably allo. So, but if it does, consider getting out of the cum.
Yeah, like if you think about sex never, probably ace. Um, or if you like, if you only think about it when someone makes a dumb innuendo or you see it on the screen and you're like, I hate this shit. I mean, probably a good indicator you're ace. If you see sex and you're like, not bad, or that doesn't necessarily mean you're not ace, but you might have more questions to look through and discover as you're on your journey. But if you're positive, all of your friends are way into this sexiness and innuendos and always talking about it, and you're like, I never even think about that stuff, you're probably ace. Question statement: I think about sex in a very scientific way without experiencing erotic feelings. Definitely, for sure. For me, anyway, I'll go a little opiniony here. Is I definitely think about it scientifically. Like, I'm curious why and how and like all of those questions. Like, why? How does that work? Why would you do that? Um, but I never thought about connecting it with like love or romance or anything besides, like, for me it's like research. It's like, huh, so that's how that works, or huh, that's why people are like, it's like I'd love to like study someone's brain while they're like doing that, just to see what the brain looks like why would you, I mean, yeah, there's endorphins and whatnot, but like, is there something else that makes it you want to happen, or like maybe see someone's brain when they see someone and they experience sexual attraction, like what chemicals and what does your brain look like that. That's kind of how I see it, because like it's interesting that people want to do that to me. So if you kind of take sex out of the common societal things on it, and you're not like, I got to do that and virginity sounds great and stuff like that, um you're probably ace, because it's just a thing that's there. It's just another, it's like, I don't know, it's like no, that might be fun. I'm thinking of trying to think of things that are not fun and mundane, but everything I think about is more fun than I would think sex would be. So
Doing your taxes,
probably more. I mean, it's
babysitting,
yeah, I would definitely do that
listen
over
to someone
sex.
talk about their sex life.
Ugh, both are bad.
Just some questions to think about. As far as my take on this matter, if you have gotten this far in this episode and think that I think any other way about sex and sexuality, uh, please email me and tell me what your thoughts are because your boy is lost. And for this next question, we are halfway there. So for the next question, it's definitely okay for me to be in a relationship with someone who does not want to have sex. For the
Ooh,
majority of ace people, I think this is a good indicator. Well, it doesn't determine anything 100%. Not having to do that, it's a pretty sweet deal because a lot of people who are in relationships with allo people, that is one of the biggest hassles of being in that relationship with an allo person, is the whole, oh fuck, I gotta put out. Uh.
right.
So to me, I think this is a pretty good indicator to think about when considering being in the asexuality spectrum or on it, whatever.
Yeah, like if you're scrolling through OkCupid, Tinder, whatever, you're thinking about, and then you're like, this person is not, they're not interested in sex, or maybe you see that they're asexual, and you're like, oh great, yes, I don't have to have sex with them. That's great. You're
You've made
probably
a
ace.
ching motion in
Right.
response to doing that. You might not be on the ace spectrum, but I mean,
Probably.
consider it. Or consider that you might not be attracted to your partner as much as you want to be.
There's that. There is that problem, but
Did we do a call out? Did we do our first call out?
we may have called out some people. Like
Oh,
if
well,
you think about being in a relationship with someone that you're in and you're like, oh, I don't want to have sex with them, but then you think about somebody else and you're like, ooh, sex with them would be great. It's probably you're not attracted to your partner. You're probably
I
not
guess
ace.
sex drive goes into there too, right?
True.
Like, yeah, it's like, oh well, I had sex with him like 7 months ago, and maybe 7 months from now I want to do it again naturally. So there's that angle, but
Yeah,
consider it
there's some libido there, but yeah, like if it's
secret
just
libido.
yeah, secret libido. If you're just like, he's
It's
not
gonna be my new
that
Instagram.
handle secret libido. Yeah, so if you're like, this isn't what I thought, or whatever, you might not be ace, but if you're trying to get into a relationship and you're like, oh, thank God they don't want to have sex, you're probably ace. I am repulsed by sex. Now, this is a biggie for a lot of ace people that sex is gross and repulsive and you don't want to do it and you don't want to have anything to do with it. That's me. I'm sex repulsed. And it's
Same.
just ugh, no. I don't want to do it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to see your sex stuff or hear about your sex stories or see it.
Unless it's under on Instagram under the handle secret libido.
Yeah, I don't. It's no, I don't want. I don't even know if I want secret libido. Honestly, no, I'm just kidding. Um, you just don't want anything to do with it. And when you find yourself in a situation where there's innuendos or people are talking about sex or it's there's just all this sex talk, sex stuff, and you're
Usually,
just
like,
like,
yeah,
ugh, this is gross. I hate it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. You're probably ace.
and it
Not
has differing degrees because we all need to adapt. Well,
right.
we don't have to, honestly. I sure
Yeah.
fucking haven't. Well, but I also have. I have created a method of trolling my friends through. I have a variety of responses, and if any of you tell on me, so help me God or Satan or whoever's up there or down there, or I don't. It's not a binary, okay? We have our non-binary deities, okay? But also, 25% of the time, I lean into the sexual joke because I get it and it's funny, and I'm gonna lean in and make it funnier. 25% of the time, I literally don't know what the fuck they're talking about because I don't research or do this stuff.
Right.
And then the other 50% of the time, I will pretend I don't know what they're talking about and not lean in and be like, "What? Huh?
Yeah,
What?"
which leads to, since we have the same group of we have a cross section of group of friends, which leads into me legitimately not understanding it and people thinking I do.
I didn't know there was that I didn't know you suffered for my trolling. I'm not going to stop. I apologize in advance.
I didn't think you would.
You got to give out a little damage. It's funny.
True.
I prefer to be in a relationship with no sexual activity. I don't prefer to be in a relationship at all, but this is a good question for sex positive asexuals. So, if you do want to have sexual activity in your relationship or you do enjoy it because you are sex positive, think about why. Think if you could fit into the ace umbrella. If you are not sex positive and this sounds like fucking amazing, or you're not attracted to your partner and you are allo or you're poly, and this particular relationship you're like, why am I not sexually attracted to them? But they give you all this other shit.
Hmm.
Consider it. Like there's like, again, these are just our opinions, and while we educate, the main education we want to give is the power for you to ask these questions yourself and see where the truth lies within.
Yeah,
Pull
so
it
that you
right
can,
out, pull it right out, and bleed out.
so you can see, or maybe someone who's ace, and you're like, huh, I listened to this podcast, and I think I'm ace based on this thing, and maybe you could talk to someone else who's ace and give yourself some concrete assurance that you are or you're not. Um, but yeah, to be in a relationship with no sexual activity, bueno, great. Not on the table. All this pressure that you didn't
Winter
want
is over,
anyway.
baby.
Right. All this pressure that you didn't want anyway, gone. Woohoo. So if you feel that woohoo, that excitement over not having sex in your relationship, you're probably ace. Seeing naked, conventionally attractive bodies does not arouse me. Yeah, uh naked is I don't want to see dicks or vages or lack thereof. I don't keep that in your pants or your skirt or your whatever kilt. I don't whatever your garment is, I don't want to see it.
You heard it
And that
first here. Wear your garments. Doesn't matter if you're sexual or asexual. Keep them on.
So if you have that kind of a feeling as well as you're like, and or if you're just like, naked's whatever, I don't really care.
Right. I know some cultures, these people are just fucking naked all the time. Well, they're not fucking. Well, I mean, they are fucking naked, but they're not. They're just naked. So it's just
Right.
like, it's like the sun being out. It's like, okay, Todd's got a dick out today at the nudist camp, or in another not American culture, like just Todd's just
Right.
walking around with his dick out, or like
Right.
Shelly's itching her vag right in front of the kids. Like, no big deal.
No big deal. Right. It's like no big deal in some cultures, even in
Might be a big
some
deal the way I said it.
groups, but like if you were to accidentally come on upon like a porno magazine or something, I'm sure that's not what they're called. But
It's all on the internet now, Jesse. The '90s are over.
the 90s are over. If you come across one of those Playboy porno magazines, anyway, um,
That you found in your father's dresser drawer that he told you never to go into.
then perhaps, yeah, and you're just like, oh, gross. Like for me, if I see a spider on a page, I freak out about spiders. I'm like,
Or
I
you're
can't
really
touch that
into the
page.
articles.
Same with, right, or you're really into the article, or you didn't even notice that there was a naked person, and you're just reading it, and you're flipping, you're like, ah, whatever.
You're just
You're
flipping through, getting to the get to the video game ads. I've never read a porno magazine, so I don't know.
so, yeah, that's probably a pretty good indicator that you're ace as well.
So if you're keeping score, which we haven't been keeping score at all, please add that to the tally if you are questioning your sexuality.
Oh yeah. We if you're making check marks like yeah, question 14, definitely feeling like it makes me uncomfortable and doesn't arouse me, and you're making tallies, uh we won't be able to give you a tally count of what makes you ace or not at the end. We didn't do that beforehand and we probably won't.
You
That's all
could
up.
write essays to each question and send them to our Gmail, to which I will probably read them and not respond.
I'll respond, but anyway, um I think you're up, Alex.
I have never initiated sex. I'm shy. No, I've never done it because I've never been interested. So, well, demisexual people exist. So, why
Yeah,
do demisexual people do sex? That will be an episode we need to do, I think. But
right.
for me personally, no. I think that is a good indicator. Like if you've never initiated sex because you weren't interested or you didn't want it, consider the spectrum.
Yeah, like I've definitely never initiated it. I've been asked and been like, "Oh, uh, no." Or when I was in before I knew I was ace, I just thought I was like, "Oh, I'm saving myself for marriage." And if that's something that you have said to yourself and found it very easy to do, you might be ace.
And we've made it to the lightning round because a lot of these questions start to sound exact same, and we've answered a lot of them before. So I'm just
Ah.
gonna rattle them off and let Jesse talk about them.
All right.
Question 17, I wouldn't mind if I never had sex again. Question 18, I would prefer to be sexually inactive. Question 19, I lacked interest in sex or sexual activities. Jesse, go.
Yes, if you're like, oh, that sex was boring, it was gross, I didn't like it. What was the point? Probably ace. Probably ace. If you prefer to be sexually inactive, you might be ace. You might just like celibacy. But once again, being ace is about attraction, not about activity. You lack interest in sex or sexual activities. Yeah, you're like, that's sounds boring, or I don't really care, or I guess. You might be ace. You might have a low libido, which can be part of being ace. But
Or you're just in it for the money because it's work.
yeah, yeah. Like you're just like, all right, I'll have sex with this guy. I want to get a new, you know, I don't know, I want to get a new purse.
Grandpa needs a new monitor, and he's not getting one until he puts out.
So, yeah, there's plenty of reasons there where you're just like, yeah, never want to have sex, would rather not have sex, and I don't really have any interest. Those are pretty good indicators, but like we said before, there are sex positive ace and there are ace people that do have sex, so it's a good indicator, but it's not the ultimate like, hey, I'm definitely ace because of this. All
And then
right.
the last question is I am confused by how much interest and time other people put into sexual activities. This is was sort of addressed in another question, but I would say yeah, it's pretty confusing. Like bro, you come in 30 seconds. Like why do you spend 17 hours on dating apps every day? Like
Yeah, it's it's weird like how Tinder or Grinder is, or I don't know, is I think there's a
enter
Grinder.
whatever dating site is your favorite here so we can trash it.
Well, I mean, not necessarily dating sites, but places that are for hookups, I would
Yeah,
say.
the bar, the sex club, the library, your job, upstairs, all of it. I'm trashing it all. Right in the garbage.
Right in the garbaggio. Yeah, so if that's like something you're just like, nah, I'm good. And I don't that's why are we talking about this or doing it? I'm not no. If that's what's coming up, you're probably ace.
And then after this, I think we are done with all the questions. We may have missed one or duplicated them. I don't apologize, but we have a few other notes we want to go over before we end the episode.
Mhm.
So, questions you could ask yourself is like when you want to fuck someone just from watching them, or you have an emotional connection, and I would say parasocial connections count too, like celebrities or fictional characters.
Mhm.
While there's some mix with the romantic attraction, which we will probably be our next episode is going over that because I feel it's much more nebulous and people are much more unsure about it than they are about asexuality. But this is obligatory; we have to do it. We're an asexuality podcast, so ultimately, like, do you see the connection, sex as part of that connection? Is it a chore or is it something you enthusiastically want? It's like, give me that dick.
Ugh.
So great. And then, but I'm going to hand it to Jesse for a specific question. But first, I want to go over a couple allosexual myths. Some things that we ace people sort of lump onto allosexuals without that's not accurate or useful. One, they're not horny all the time. Post nut clarity exists. Their non-attraction is not dissimilar to ours. Someone when an allo person is not attracted to someone, their base it's basically like being ace towards that person, right? They know when
Yeah.
they're on or off. They have a pretty good idea of that, and they might have different levels of libido and how far they're willing to go to get that sexual activity. Like some people will
Mhm.
they'll ruin their lives and alienate their whole families and friends just because the lady who abuses the hell out of them gives really good head, but it's not the majority. Most people have a balance towards it, and most of it is communicated privately within the context of their own partnerships.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think we wanted to
Definitely.
go over trauma, so we're
Yeah.
gonna reinstate the content warning here and let
Mhm.
Jesse talk about it.
So we're gonna look at trauma a little bit, which is gonna come again with the warning we had at the top about sexual assault, trauma, triggers, medical procedures, stuff like that that could just trigger you. Just want to give you a heads up in case you need to dip out. All right, so some people say that trauma, especially sexual assault, can make you asexual. And then you're not really asexual because it's just the trauma. A lot of medical professionals in the behavioral health scene will say this, I found. And that does not necessarily mean that you're not ace because there's plenty of people who have had trauma that are not ace. They've been, and they've been raped maybe, they've been assaulted, molested, and they have no problem having sex. And they experience sexual attraction. Maybe they even enjoy it. There's some people that have had trauma that are sex repulsed, scared of it. It brings back horrible memories. It triggers them. It brings back flashbacks, and they're not ace. They still experience sexual attraction. They just wish they didn't, maybe. But trauma can trauma affects your life and affects your personality and how you see things. So it can attribute to asexuality, but it's not what makes you ace. It's like what makes you ace is that lack of sexual attraction. And you could potentially that trauma could potentially remove that sexual attraction depending on or it could affect that sexual attraction. Like maybe you never really found anyone like sexually attractive. Maybe you weren't really that, but you sex was whatever. Sex was like, it's a thing, whatever. And then you experienced some trauma, maybe sexual assault, and now you're sex repulsed. But that does not affects your aceness because now you're sex repulsed, and that maybe helps you feel more ace. But you may have already had those feelings of not experiencing sexual attraction before that. A lot of people that are told they aren't really ace because it's trauma experienced abuse as a child or a minor, and are told that because you never had that, because you experienced trauma so young and you didn't have that sexual experience, then you're not really ace. You just are traumatized and whatnot. I've heard that from medical professionals all the time, but you your asexuality can be connected to your trauma, and it can or it cannot be. It's your decision, and don't let medical professionals or other people say you're only ace because or this if you get enough healing you won't be ace anymore because it doesn't really work like that. That's not how it. That's not how asexuality works. It's like a lot of the other things on the LGBTQ spectrum, and we don't know what makes people straight. We don't know what makes people not straight. It's just that. It's that. It's not your trauma. Trauma, like I said, it can affect it, but it's not going to come out and define it for you. And maybe you feel like it does, and that's fine too. If you're like, hey, this happened to me, and I don't know if I was ace before it, but I know I'm ace now, and you'd have that, I'm not sure, that whole, I don't know if this trauma is why I'm ace, and that uneasy feeling, and you have no way to know that, it's that's fine too. You have to step in and decide whether or not you're going to try to, I'm going to say, quote, fix that issue, or if you're going to accept it. Because if you don't know and you have no way of knowing, you have to pick an option. Otherwise, you're going to be in this limbo zone where you're not sure and there's a lot of questions. But there's also a lot of therapy involved in that, so that's another thing. Um, but being sex repulsed because of trauma is pretty common with sexual assault. But I also know plenty of people that have had that unfortunate traumatic experience that are fine with sex. So just remember that if someone says to you, "Oh, you're only asexual because you were assaulted," you're not really asexual. You just think you are. Remind them that there's plenty of people who've been assaulted that do like sex and are not asexual. And don't let it be something on you. Like, just throw it back at them. Be like, well, you're wrong. So, there's also, I don't know if you want me to tackle this one or if you want to tackle the medications and whatnot.
We'll keep it really short. I know we're going kind of long. So the other medical issues can cause a lack of a lack of libido and sexual drive or attraction. So there are certain cancer treatments or medications or operations that can do that to you. So
Mm-hmm.
please be sure to fit those in when you're thinking about asexuality.
Yeah, there's medications, antidepressants, all that kind of stuff that can make you feel like, oh, I don't, or cause like, or even depression itself can make you feel like you don't have that. So look at those kind of things as you are exploring and thinking about asexuality and your journey. Like, is this because of this, or is it something else? And maybe it is because of medication and you feel like this is who you are, what you are. And like we said at the top of this, we can't make this decision, not that it's really a decision, but we can't make this identifying option for you. That's really up to you. We just want to help you in your journey and help you think about those things that we thought about at different points and other ace people have thought about how they came to realize they were ace.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good job. Yes, and if you have other questions, comments, you can always email us, asomniacs@gmail.com, or hit us up on the socials.
You can
We'll,
even hit on us. We like the attention.
it's true. So we'll have another podcast in this vein of looking at aromanticism and how that looks and those questions because it's harder to define it because it's so linked. It's linked even more so to societal pressures than it even sexuality is.
We're gonna rip off the band-aid and laugh at your pain.
Well, Alex will. Um, so thanks for joining us, and we
Yes,
look.
thank you. Thank you for if you made it this far. Whew, you have character, you have strength. You're a scholar. You're people say you're a gentleman and a scholar, but we need to make something funnier and more inclusive.
Yeah, you're a gem. Like you're ooh, you're a really great cereal brand. I don't know. That's not helpful.
It's the closest I've ever wanted to have sex. No, no, I can't even go that far. I can't even fake it. Yeah. Thanks for coming to our podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.